For better, for worse, till death do us part. These words are part of the familiar wedding vows exchanged by two parties in front of their loved ones, vowing to be together forever. But what happens when you don't make it to forever? This is Moolah Insider, where we are all about personal finance and your relationship with money. My name is Mercy Milanoi, and this week we delve into marital laws and the conversation around prenuptial agreements. And remember to log on to www.moolah.co.ke for more stories and link with us on our social media pages. First, let's take a look at the highlights in business this week. Now, to start off this conversation, we're going to start with a few definitions. Number one, matrimonial property. According to the Kenyan law, matrimonial property refers to either the matrimonial home or homes, household goods, and effects in the matrimonial home, or any movable or immovable property jointly owned and acquired during the marriage. However, trust property, including property held in trust under customary law, does not form part of matrimonial property. Now to our main story this week. We all want a happily ever after. And while we're in the happy bubble of falling in love and planning for the big day, the last thing on your mind is a prenuptial agreement, or a prenup in short. While some might be offended once it's put on the table, Eliud Ngugi, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, tells us what a prenuptial agreement entails.
Prenups are agreements entered into between two lovers who are planning to get married before they get married, to outline how they intend to share their property after or in case of separation, divorce, or death. It's basically a document that allows them not to include their current property that they own when they are single as part of matrimonial property. So the component of a prenup includes the names of the two lovers, the property they intend to not include as matrimonial property, and how they intend to distribute these properties in case of any event of what I had mentioned, separation, death, or divorce. Basically means that you get your property that you co-owned together during the marriage. So you're going to get and distribute the property, the only property that you bought together as a party, or as individuals when you are married. If you went and secretly bought yourself a piece of property, or you bought yourself an apartment, and you are going separate ways, that is supposed to be included as part of the matrimonial property. So you don't walk away with nothing. You walk with the property that your partner or yourself got during the course of your marriage. the law provides that you have to enter or you have to sign a prenup before earlier on, not 21 days to the marriage. I don't know whether that comes out. So the reason why they say that is because they don't want you to be coerced or not to be in the right mental state, whereby you are so emotional and excited about this marriage and you just sign off. They want you to seek first legal counsel. You separate legal counsel or legal advice. Get yourself a lawyer who is going to elaborate and explain to you. Secondly, they want you to make sure that your partner discloses all the things that they own before you sign that document that limits what can be included as a matrimonial property. A prenup protects your property before you get married, 21 days before you get married. Relationships at times do not last a lifetime, and people sometimes have differences and they go separate ways, they divorce, and at times death comes and takes away your partner. And when such an event takes place, what happens and what we have seen as Africans is that people will start fighting for properties. And if you had a prenup, one advantage you have is that the property you owned as a single person will not be included in the list of matrimonial properties that your partner is going to fight for and go asking for in court. So it will be secure. So that 5 acres of land or that apartment will be secure because it will not be part of this list. So that's one advantage. The other advantage is that it saves you on cost, because if you had already agreed earlier on, then do not be included in this list, which means that if those are the only properties you had, for example, you get married and 1 year down the line you divorce, you will not find yourself going to court to fight over properties. So you save on money and you save on time. That's the other advantage. It's still new. Kenyans are not taking up prenups yet. And I think a factor contributing to that is the fact that the prenups were introduced in 2014 under a law we call the Matrimonial Property Act. Actually, Matrimonial Property Act of 2013. So they were introduced in 2014, and that's around 6-7 years ago. And so it's still not yet something that, information that is out there in public that people are able to exercise and to use that information to their advantage. Yes and no, because one, matrimonial property is property gotten during, at the beginning, during, and at the end of a marriage. And that's what a couple fights about. Most of the fights, most of the divorces are about that property that they bought together, or I extended a personal loan to you as my partner, and so I want a claim. I'm placing a claim on that property. That's what most of the divorces are all about. And so from where I sit, I don't think you need a prenup for that purpose. Because of these other incidences that we are referring to, that maybe you may get into a marriage that does not last longer than maybe even a year or 5 years or 10 years. And you are married to a nasty person who wants to lay a claim on your property, then a prenup will be something advisable to actually consider. Applies whether you're married or not, because couples tend to go to court to fight over property that they own during a marriage. And what amounts to a marriage? It could either be a customary marriage, whereby they have gone ahead and introduce themselves, each other to the parents, or it can be a civil marriage where you have gone to the ages or to church and you have signed a certificate. And so a prenup can apply to people who are not married. But then again, the law on marriage requires that you register your marriage. And any marriage that is not registered within a certain timeline does not qualify to be a marriage. So again, it cannot apply to an unmarried couple.
Now let's take a look at what makes a prenuptial agreement valid. Number one, the agreement must be freely entered into. The parties must have full appreciation of the implication of the agreement. Next, they must be signed before the formalization of the marriage. Now, what should a prenup cover? Number one, retirement, investment funds, property and other finances, and most importantly, debts. It should also cover how sentimental items should be handled. Now, there are several types of agreements related to marriage. The first one is the main contract, which is the marriage contract itself, which is your agreement to marry your partner. Other agreements that married persons may enter into include prenuptial agreement, which is our focus today. Now, this is a contract that you and your spouse enter into before the marriage, and this contract describes what property and financial assets such as stocks, bonds, etc. you and your spouse bring into the marriage. The next contract is a prenuptial agreement. Also includes how property and assets acquired during the marriage should be divided in the event of a divorce. The next one is post-nuptial agreement. This is a contract that you and your spouse enter into after you're legally married and describes how your property and assets will be divided in the event of divorce or death. And the next one is separation agreement. Now, this is an agreement in which you and your spouse agree to live separately and apart from one another without getting divorced. Now, the separation agreement addresses how you and your spouse want to handle child support, child custody and visitation, spousal maintenance, and dividing your property and assets. And the final one is marital settlement agreement. This is an agreement in which you and your spouse agree to end your marriage, and you may be able to agree on the details without getting into the court involved. Now, the marital agreement, also called a stipulation of settlement, addresses how you and your spouse want to handle your property and assets, spousal and child support obligations, and visitation and custody agreements without court involvement. Well, you are watching Moolah Insider, and remember to check out our website www.moolah.co.ke for more stories, and link with us on our social media pages. Coming up is another exciting episode of Pursuits. Now, this week on Pursuits, still on conversations in relationships. Money conversations in relationships are not easy. This week on Pursuits, David Madenge, aka Nameless, shares how he and his wife Wahukagwe manage the finances and why it's important to have individual accounts, even married. Take a look.
I met Wahu basically just at the start. So if I say my music career started 20 years ago, then I met Wahu a year before that. I met Wahu in a kind of like a concert, campus concert. So out of passion, she was there singing a gospel song. I was there also, a campus student who's there and trying to sing a song. So we met there because we both had passions in music. Immediately I got into the industry as Nameless. She also went to Gopa, and then she started recording, and even her career started taking off. We are lucky that we started off together. When I look back, and we started off earning and growing together. So you can literally feel to may grow 50-50. One thing that I feel we've done and I think is good, we've done three things. We're like, there's me, there's her, and there's us. So in everything, like even investments, there's a joint investment. Even bank accounts, there are some that is joint. We're like, okay, contribute to the joint account, and we're buying something, we're buying from the joint account, but we still individually have individual accounts. For me, I feel it's important to have the joint, but it's also still important to retain your own identity, but with the security that even if you're there, I'm there by you being there.
Well, that is quite interesting. Now let's take a look at leading indicators this week, starting with stocks and foreign exchange. Let's take a look at the best prices of basic commodities this week across selected supermarkets. Well, that's all we had for you this week on Moolah Insider. Remember to also check out our website www.moolah.co.ke for more stories and link with us on our social media pages. And remember, yes, the butterflies might be there, but it's important to go through the law and see what is in store for your love. Well, my name is Mercy Milanoi. See you next week.